Well, hello, everybody. My name is John. I'm from VETtoCEO, and we're thrilled to have you here tonight. Thanks for making it. And we've got an action-packed hour planned, up to an hour. Hopefully, it's a little earlier. But without any further delay, let me just orient you to the resources you have in front of you. On your left side, you see some icons. The one I want to pull out is the fifth one from the top. If you click on that, you can get contact information for our panelists, as well as a bio and their LinkedIn profile and all that. So we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about ourselves. We're going to get straight to the meat of the content. But if you want to know about the panelists, that's where you find out about us. On the resource list below the video, you find resources. There are links to some websites, a brochure on the topic of this evening from Neighborly, as well as some other links, include a copy of the slides that you see there. Even if you're watching the recording, by the way, you can download those resources. The main box to know is the Q&A box in the lower right. You should all know what that is. We encourage the submission of questions at any time. We really want you to involve yourself with the program as much as you want. And again, if you're watching a recording, you can submit a question in that box, and that an email will go to the appropriate person to answer your question. So we encourage you to do that. And lastly, you can make the content area full screen or move it around or resize it as you see fit. Make the screen your own. You're not going to screw it up for anybody else. All right, so enough of the admin stuff. Let's get right to it. So what you see here is the panel that we have assembled tonight. The bookends are myself and Mike Horn. Mike is my co-founder of VETtoCEO, and you can see the kind of stuff he's involved in outside of that as well as you can see for me. I'm the CEO of Fola Capital. We raise money for startups and acquisitions and existing businesses, and you can see the rest for the other panelists as well. I'm joined tonight by Brian from Neighborly. Brian's been a big supporter of VETtoCEO. We certainly support that, and is Neighborly has been a big supporter of veterans in general, and you'll hear a lot more about that tonight. And couldn't be more thrilled to have Brian representing Neighborly here in that regard. The real star of the show is Doug. Sorry, Mike. The real star of the show is Doug, and Doug's going to tell his story. And he's a fellow Air Force veteran, and he bought a franchise. So that's what the topic is. But through his story, we can all learn, and you can make some points about his story. And the resident expert here around that is Diana, and she advises folks on how to buy and sell franchises and has a long career doing that. And I've learned a lot just on 2 prep calls, more than I knew before. So she is a wealth of knowledge, and we're thrilled to have her here. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mike. What we're going to do is just set the stage with a little bit of content we have from VETtoCEO over the 3 paths to small business ownership, and then we'll get to our panel. So, Mike, over to you. Mike, you're on mute.
Thank you, John. So at VETtoCEO, we talk about 3 paths to become business owners. The 3 paths fit into different folks and apply to different people, but they're 3 ways to get into business. And we always talk about these 3. We in the Pass the Guide On program, we talk about these 3 also, but it's important that you understand these. So the 3 ways to get into business are to do a startup, which is what excites a lot of people, buy an existing business, which is what I did, or buy a franchise, which is what I did. And as I said, these ways of getting into business have their pros and cons, and we want everyone to understand them. First of all, as far as financial history is concerned, when you go down the startup route, your startup business has no financial history, and there are advantages and disadvantages associated with that everyone needs to understand. When you're buying an existing business, you get to take advantage of that financial history many times, but it's a double-edged sword. If there were challenges with the financials, then you have to be creative in how you present that story. In the case of a franchise, there is a financial history related to other businesses just like that. And that is an important piece of information for financial institutions. As far as brand power is concerned, when you go down the startup path, you have no brand power and you have to create that. When you buy an existing business, you get to inherit the brand power that that existing business has. And again, that can be a double-edged sword. It can be really good or it can be not so good, and you need to turn it around. In the case of a franchise, you automatically get brand power because franchises are out there to disseminate their brand power, and that's one of the valuable things that they provide to entrepreneurs. Customers are very similar. In the case of a startup, we have no customers. When we buy an existing business, generally you're going to purchase the customer list, and hopefully that's going to be a long document with lots of names and phone numbers and email addresses. And the same thing is true for a franchise. When you purchase a franchise, you're most likely going to have people that are familiar with the franchise, and they're going to come to your business because you're part of the franchise system. Seller financing, which is always a big thing, an important thing for veterans, in the case of a startup, is non-existent. There is no seller financing available. When you buy an existing business, it is something that it's important that we look at immediately, because if the seller is willing to finance your acquisition of the business, that can seriously help you as the acquiring owner down your entrepreneurial path. And the same thing is true when you're buying an existing franchise. If you buy a franchise that's already up and running, that seller may very well be interested in financing your acquisition of the business. So, a very important thing for you to think of. The last thing that we'll talk about is ease of financing. And this is always a significantly critical item for veterans. Uh, in the case of a startup, they are absolutely the most difficult to finance. Financial institutions, whether they're banks or non-regulated financial institutions, really struggle sometimes financing a startup. Buying an existing business, financial institutions are typically a little bit easier on existing businesses because you can go in there and you can show them the financials for the prior business, and they're going to make assumptions similar to what you'll make, that you're going to be able to continue with the sales with the way that the prior owner have been conducting business. In the case of a franchise, financing an existing franchise can be very easy, or it can be not as easy. It depends on the situation in the franchise. It depends on the franchise. And so all of these factors come into play when we're thinking about getting into business. And as I mentioned, at VETtoCEO, we talk about these three paths. In our Pass the Guide On program, we talk about these paths. So if you want more information about our programs, visit us on our website at VETtoCEO.org. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian now. And Brian is going to share all kinds of really good information. Brian, take it from here.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Hey, it's great to be here tonight. Thank you for having us. We have been a great supporter for VETtoCEO. We love what you guys do. We love the program that you put your people through and helping them kind of find that path that's right for them and to business ownership. So for us, we're going to talk a lot about franchising and resale. So let's combine two of the ways of getting into business and look at them both at the same time. So my expertise, as you can see from my bio, I've been in franchising my whole career, so 30 plus years now that I've been doing this, and have worked for multiple franchise brands in my career, and currently work for Neighborly. If you go to the next slide for me. Neighborly, for those that don't know or don't know who we are, haven't seen us before. So Neighborly, we are the largest home services franchise company in the world. So you'll see on the screen right now, you'll see our 19 North American brands. We also own 13 brands that are in Germany and the UK, in addition to these 19. So we have 32 brands total underneath the Neighborly umbrella. All of those brands do one of three things. They will either maintain, repair, or enhance a home. So we all share the same customer across all our brands. All of our brands' customers are homeowners. And so it's a very unique focus. It's a very fine focus that we have, and we don't go outside of that. We stay within home services for a specific reason. One, we do it really, really well. We've been doing it since 1981. We are not new to this game. We started our company with one brand, Rainbow Restoration, in 1981, and have grown to the brands we have today by focusing very, very specifically in the home services space. So, but enough about Neighborly and about us. I want to get on to talking with our panelists and talking specifically. I want to go and talk a little bit about Doug and his journey to business ownership, because he combined two of the things that Mike talked about. He combined buying an existing business, and that existing business happened to be a franchise. Wasn't necessarily what Doug went looking for. He went looking for a successful business, and that's what he found. So I'll turn it over, Doug, if you wouldn't mind just kind of walking us through your background, a little bit of your story.
You bet. Thanks, Brian. Well, we'll start at the end. You can see that I'm the proud owner of a dump truck, and for only a few $1 million of SBA loan, you too could have something to do yard work like I can. It's one of the beautiful benefits of being a plumbing company owner. So my wife and I are 2.5 years into being the owners of Mr. Rooter Plumbing of Portland, Oregon, and Vancouver, Washington. We have the great fortune to look after 53 team members and serve homeowners with service plumbing. It's a great industry to be in. We'll reverse back of how did I get into this CEO seat that I never really thought I would have, and I certainly didn't imagine leading a team of plumbers. Since this is the VETtoCEO program, I'll hit my military background. And on the slide, I was in the Air Force from 73 to 2000. That's obviously a bit facetious. I was born in 73, but I was born into the family business. I was third generation Air Force officer. My granddad had a 30-year career as an Air Force pilot. My father had a 30-year career as an Air Force pilot. Their commissions all overlapped. We had continuous service starting in 42. And I went to the academy with the goal of being an aircraft operator, being a flyer. They found a heart problem that kept me out of the cockpit, and so I diverted into aircraft maintenance. And maybe that'll come up later, but aircraft maintenance was an awesome training ground for leading a plumbing company. I just didn't know it, what I was being trained for at the time. So I did aircraft and munitions maintenance, worked on F-15s, B-2 stealth bomber. And my wife and I, the world was a quiet place in 2000, and we chose to move to the civilian side. And I went with an outfit whose specialty was to take junior officers and place them with Fortune 500 companies. And I'd probably get canceled for saying this in some other forums, but I was a diversity candidate. I mean, honestly, Campbell Soup was primarily hiring MBAs out of top tier programs to be brand managers. And they were interested in creating some diversity in the leadership background. And so I got dropped in as a brand manager within Campbell next to all these other folks who'd been at Ivy League schools. And all I had was those experiences in the military, learning leadership, for real. Campbell invested in me in a big way, and I was with them for 8 years, leading different brands, learning a lot about business there, and then made a jump to a company called Precor. Precor, based in Seattle, Washington, we manufacture in the United States fitness equipment for gyms and hotels, so high-end commercial gear. I was there for 13 years. I came in as their head of marketing and product management, played a bunch of executive roles led sales teams, was traveling the world. For a while, I was in charge of our Asian and our European markets. I was gone 4 months a year, but doing some really cool stuff, getting great business experiences. I thought I might retire there. I wanted to retire there. Actually wanted to be the CEO there, and that was the plan. But then our owners asked us to sell the company. And when the owners said to the executive squad, "We want you to sell the company," that's when my wife and I took a huge pause and said, okay, what are we going to do if we're not aligned with the new owners? Or if the new owners come in and want to wipe the executive suite out, what are we going to do? And I don't want to climb the ladder again. I want to lead. I need to have a team. I need to be able to set direction. And there's no way I'm going to go to another big firm and land in the middle. And we Googled, how do you buy a business? And took off from there. So sure enough, we did find the right buyer for that company, fiduciary responsibility. We sold it to the buyer who was willing to pay the most. I didn't want to be part of that. So the day the deal closed, I resigned and said a sad goodbye to my team. My wife and I then started a full-time search for a business. And we looked at over 100 different confidential investment memoranda, put out a couple of letters of intent. I think you've probably been learning about these processes, and ultimately found this opportunity, which we're now happily operating for the last 2.5 years. So there's a high-speed version of 50 years. And if you want to hear the longer version of how that search happened, how we funded the deal, the kind of businesses we looked at, go check out the podcast, Acquiring Minds by Will Smith. And he interviewed me for episode 93 and episode 220. And we get into depth about how to go find a business.
That's great, Doug, and an amazing background. And I'm sure many of the people on the call can understand it, associate with it, and see exactly where you're coming from. So Diana Caprano, who's on the call with us as well. Diana is an expert on reselling businesses, right? She works on both the seller and the buyer side, has represented both sellers and buyers in that process. She now focuses pretty much exclusively on franchises for sale versus independent businesses, and works a lot with the neighborly brands as well. And she was actually the seller's representative when Doug found the Mr. Rooter business in Portland. And that's how Doug got to know her and got to work with her. I've had the privilege of working with Diana now for my 2.5 years here at Neighborly as well. So Diana, let's start at the beginning. Let's start kind of very basic, just in case there's somebody out there that doesn't really know, hey, what's a resale? What is a resale? Define what that is. What is that? How do I know a resale is something versus different than a startup?
Right. It's a great question, Brian, and we shouldn't assume people know that, right? But it's exactly as the word says. A resale is nothing more than the sale of an existing business. So part of what Mike was talking about earlier, right, a startup versus an existing business, be it franchise or independent, it's something that's already operational and does have a history, simply said.
That's very nice. I like the nice, concise definition. So, and then what are some of the things why would someone be interested in doing that, looking at a resale versus I want to go start something up new from scratch?
Right. That's an excellent question. And, there's people that, like probably a lot of the people on the call today, that, could look at all of it, right? There's nothing wrong to looking at all of it. However, most of the people that I deal with, the largest thing is cash flow. They could be like Doug, Doug exited corporate. Either they're being downsized, whatever the reason is, the rationale, a lot of times they're saying, well, wait a minute, I can't afford, right, to do a startup because it may take months or years, right, typically years to hit a break even. So cash flow would be the number one reason someone would look at a resale. Mike mentioned earlier as the intro on the call, not all resales are really created equal, right? So for the purposes of this call, I'm really going to talk to the ideal. So in an ideal situation, you're purchasing the cash flow, you're purchasing a positive net profit business, and one where the owners are drawing a salary and potentially other benefits. So that would be the first reason I would tell you people seek out a resale. Second would be, the infrastructure. So again, doing that heavy lifting in a startup at the beginning, you have to do all that. Even in a franchise system is great. Neighborly is fantastic. All of that exists. But if you're buying an existing business, infrastructure, when I say infrastructure in terms of like a Neighborly business, I'm talking about the staff, right? That is there performing whatever the functions are that they perform. Maybe there's management people as well as, additional field staff. Infrastructure also is you're buying assets. Some businesses are more heavily asset loaded than others. Infrastructure includes customers, so all of that. So it'd be cash flow, infrastructure. The next would be the brand. So again, if it's a franchise resale, 9 times out of 10, unless it just started pretty recently, if it's a mature franchise especially, it's been around in the neighborhood. It's been around. You've seen if it's a retail space, you've driven by it. If it's a Neighborly brand, you've seen their vehicles. So that's very important to have that brand recognition instead of, again, having to do that heavy lift. And I would say there's a lot of reasons, but I guess my last one would be you're starting with an existing customer base. That kind of speaks to the cash flow, right? But the customer base, you have a database of people that have used your services in the past, continue to use your services. You can remarket to them. Some of the Neighborly models are even what we would call recurring revenue, right? So that base of people you have right there represents that cash flow that you would see.
And let's dive in a little bit more on the franchise piece of it, as far as what makes looking at a franchise business either more advantageous than an independent or just different.
Yeah, again, great question. And I get that all the time, where people saying, hey, and Doug even looked at independents, I'm sure, to be right. Well, probably mostly independents. I'm not quite sure. But I would say, there's not to discount independents. I'm sure that there's some very successful independent businesses, and we may know them and see them. However, what they don't have, and again, I'll speak to Neighborly, but franchising in general, is that roadmap. They may be very large and they may have had their own little processes that they've put in place. But when you purchase a franchise and a franchise resale, you're buying into a system. And we refer to it as a system, right? Follow the system. The system is processes. It's that infrastructure sort of that I talked about with the, an independent franchise owner. The franchisor has a huge infrastructure. So that infrastructure deals with operational management, HR management, asset management, branding, marketing, recruit, all of it, hiring. So that to me, and to a lot of people that choose franchising, that really take the time to educate themselves or find someone to help them educate about it, is a big part. So proven system, I would say. The biggest, and I probably should have put that first and foremost, is you're buying into a system of other franchise owners that support you. So you have franchisor support. When you buy an independent, it's sort of like, okay, let's sign the purchase agreement. Nice to know you. And they're not there. Who's there to help support you going forward? With a company like Neighborly, you have Neighborly support in the form of business coaches. You have a plethora of different departments to support, marketing support. That does not exist in an independent. There's no way. They've made, some of the franchise owners in any brands have made mistakes. They're the ones, we talked about doing the heavy lift. We've been through it in franchising, right? We have fixed problems. We've now are focusing on how we grow. And I would say, 2 other things, independent versus franchise, is the branding. There may be the phrase we use, right, a lot, and you hear it, and I apologize if it's overused, but the chuck in the truck, right? The chuck in the truck is maybe the 1 or 2 person independent business that has their brand. But brands like a Mr. Rooter, in Doug's case, Doug's trucks are running all over Portland, Vancouver, and people see it. And there's other forms of advertising. So that brand is really entrenched in the community, and brand recognition does speak to community involvement as well. So franchisors like Neighborly are really keen on that community development. The last point I want to make, and it's huge in my book, is a franchise, a large franchise system, and one that's very mature, big and growing and well capitalized, different than an independent, right? They're standalone. A well capitalized franchisor injects money into that franchise system. It's not your money, right? They are investing money in their brands to help you. It rolls downhill, so it will help the franchisees. So you're improving your technology, your software, operations, marketing, you name it. So growth for the franchisor as the parent really means continued growth opportunities for you as a franchisee.
Definitely. All great points there, Diana, that you brought up, and all things I've learned in my career, and one of the reasons I've stayed in franchising, why I really believe in the franchising model as a way to be in business, and a very, one of the more successful ways to be in business. Doug, I want to come back to you and talk a little bit about, you mentioned it in your story, kind of when you and your wife, when you and Georgina started the process of owning, of looking to buy a business. And you looked at a lot. So I think you said looked at over 100 of these businesses. And kind of just tell the audience how that started. Like, what did you think about when you were first starting out, looking at businesses? Where did you have certain things? Okay, I know I want this and I don't want this. How did that, how did that process? How did you narrow things down and say, okay, I'm going to take a look at this one, but I'm definitely not taking a look at that one?
Yeah, begin with the end in mind. It applies every time, right? Including in this. So we certainly had criteria, and I guess shameless plug for 2 books on this. One, Harvard Business Review Guide to Buying a Small Business, and the second one is Buy Then Build by Walker Deibel. So spend $30, buy those 2 books, learn the process in addition to what you're learning through this program. So our criteria, it's been a while since I recited it, but first and foremost was a certain size and a history of cash flow. We were not going to buy an existing business that was only 3 years old, for example. And for us, existing business was the right path because a little further along in our career, we got some assets, got a style of life. I didn't want to step backwards to eating ramen again. If I was 27 years old, I might have gone for it, right? So existing made sense, but history and size. Then it was, okay, I need to have a business that is not competing online. And I don't mean advertising online, but I mean having customers online. I didn't want a business that some guy in Ohio could pop up with a new e-commerce store and take out my business in Portland. I was looking for a business that was insulated from China for many reasons, not just imports, but from competition. I was looking for a business that was in a highly fragmented market. I figure if there's a lot of competitors in the market, I can at least be, if I'm at least median, but there's 50 of them in town, then I'm good. I certainly aspire to be more than median and everything, but that's a safety factor. And then I was looking for a business that was fulfilling needs, and that those categories funneled us towards home services. We certainly looked at some other categories, but we started to get really excited by home services, and that's where we obviously ended up landing.
Great. You definitely, I could tell you read the Harvard Business Review book, because they do have that checklist of look for businesses that have these things. All right. And you went through a lot of those. There's about 7, I remember right, about 6 or 7 boxes you check off when you're looking for a business. And the more you check off, the better that business probably is.
The one I didn't say though was buyer business fit.
Yep.
And this is an awesome business because I love teams. Right. Yeah. I love getting here in the morning and seeing the guys and gals in the parking lot and launching the trucks and just rallying people. But for somebody else, that might just be terrifying. For somebody else, it may be, hey, I need to be able to work from home and sit here with 4 computer monitors and master the universe with my fingertips. Right. Mm-hmm. So buyer business fit's important.
Yeah, you said something earlier when you were talking about your back. When you were talking about your job at Campbell's, when they were recruiting you at Campbell's, and you were in that kind of an outlier. You had all these Harvard MBAs, these Ivy League school MBAs that were in the same role as you were being hired into. And you said, well, all I had was, I was really learning leadership. I think you said I was learning leadership for real. and in the military, right? At the academy and then in my active duty service. And that's so true because you just mentioned it again, this desire and need. And it's what we see our veterans at Neighborly. So, 20% of our new franchisees in the last 2 years have been veterans. And there's a reason for that. Veterans have a desire to lead and an ability to lead. And I think that comes through when you're looking at owning your own business, is you can do that. And that's really what was driving you, is I want to lead again, right? You even said, I have a need to have a team and I have a need to lead, right? You mentioned both of those things. And I think every veteran on the call probably has those exact same needs. And it's one of the things that drives them to business ownership, and why such, there's 14% of veterans in the US own businesses, whereas the general public is only 7%. Twice as, veterans are twice as likely to own a business as the everyday population. And so I think that's what's driving a lot of that. So want to move on to talk a little bit. So that I appreciate all that, Doug. That was great background. And then if somebody's looking at, what was it about the franchise that maybe surprised you? Because I know you weren't looking for a franchise necessarily. You were looking for a business that fits your criteria. So once you locked into Mr. Reuter and realized, well, I guess, what was your first impression when Diana said, well, it's a franchise?
Sure. Well, listings, of course, if folks have been floating around BizBuySell or other places, they tend to be a bit anonymized. So I did not know the franchise coming in. And when I first found that out, I was disappointed.
Yeah.
Because some of the reasons we talked about before, and you can ask my team whether it's for good or ill, but I want to lead. I want to be autonomous, right? I want to be able to make those decisions with the help of my team, but I'm not looking to take orders. And so the notion of the franchisor was initially disappointing, but academically, I could understand there could be value there. And this particular business was so exciting that I moved ahead. And I quickly became comfortable with the notion. And it was because I became comfortable with Neighborly. I could easily have, there's thousands of franchisors, some of whom only have 3 franchisees and 1 tiny brand, and their entire business is probably smaller than my plumbing shop, right? But I got comfortable with Neighborly because it was had a history. It was focused in an industry, is large enough to actually have resources, and there was a proven track record of thousands of franchisees, whom I interviewed some of, who could testify to what it was like to be part of the organization. So I advocate anyone who's considering a franchise, you've got to think about the franchisor of, would I be willing to work there if I was looking for a job? That was my criteria. I'm like, I'm impressed by these folks. I like the values of this company. I like the financials of this company. I'm willing to associate with, because you do become associated with that franchisor.
Yep.
But if this particular business had been an independent one, I still would have bought it.
Sure.
There are some benefits, though, that have come from being part of Neighborly that I wouldn't have gotten if it was independent. But ultimately, that business has to be worth purchasing.
But yeah, ultimately, it's got to be a business that's worth buying. And I love what you said about you do become a part of the franchisor regardless when you're looking at it, and your way of evaluating that is from what I've learned, the people I've met, the people that have been a part of this process, is it a company I'd be comfortable working for if I was looking for a job? I really like how you put that. So Diana, what are there are a lot of those misconceptions, and the reason that Doug had that pause when he first heard from you, well, understand this is a franchise business, and Doug said, well, I wasn't really excited when I heard that. Why is that? What are those misconceptions out there?
I actually remember that call vividly. I think there was silence. So it's a franchise, so there was silence. And I'm sure, again, not first time that's happened, right, where Doug was probably processing. And what Doug just stated, I would have to tell you, is the first misconception I'd like to put out there for your guest this evening, is that lack of autonomy. Oh, it's a franchise. They're going to tell me what to do, how to walk, take my firstborn, all of that. And it can't be farther from the truth. And well, let me back up. There are franchise systems, everyone. I'll throw out a couple, and this is not to disparage, it's for compare contrast, such as a Dunkin' Donuts. I still have people calling me saying, Diane, I want a Dunkin' Donuts. There are franchise systems that have survived by telling people exactly what to do and how to do it, and don't you step out of those lines, right? They do exist, but not in my world. I don't deal with franchises like that are that way. So autonomy, or lack of the autonomy, is a misconception for the most part. You are an independent franchise owner. You are able to run your business, make decisions. There's a lot of decision making. Doug could probably write a book on the amount of decisions he gets to make, right? Or he delegates. In his case, is a big organization, delegates to the team. Neighborly, in this case, is not telling you how to run your business. They're giving you that roadmap that I referred to earlier. These are best practices. This is what we have found. So I would say that find a franchise system, if not Neighborly, one that also, like Neighborly, values your input, that has franchise councils, that you can say, hey, brand president, and Neighborly says, I think this is a good idea. Or they come to you and actively seek that out. What are you doing? You're so successful. Please share the wealth of knowledge. So back to, I mentioned earlier, having the support of the franchisees.
Right.
I think you tap into that. The other misconception, and it's
Diana,
yes,
interrupt briefly.
yeah,
To validate that, on Friday, the president of the Mr. Ritter brand sent me and two of the other top franchisees a document of his plan for the brand going forward, and asked us to join him to review that. So obviously unscripted, that just happened Friday, so you can find that.
well, yeah.
Yep.
What's the truth? We're all very honest and transparent here, and I speak the truth. My clients will tell you that, right? They're just Doug, that in dealing with me, how we did. And I work with many. I represent over 900 different, or I can represent over 900 different franchises. It's a lot, right? There's many more. However, Neighborly is one that does value that input. So other franchisees, and not just from the president to Doug and vice versa, but also the other franchise groups that care. It's a family. Back to Brian, you asked earlier, the differentiator, right, between the independent. I'm getting off topic. I'll get back to the misconceptions. Thank you, Doug, for that. The other one is fees, right? It's like, well, an independent, they don't have to pay royalty. Well, no, they don't, but they also don't have the value that a franchisor brings with their royalties. So I always say to people looking for a business or a franchise business, take a look. If you're going to look at a return on investment, I talk about a ROI with a royalty. What are you getting for that royalty? Some franchises, I will stand here this evening and tell you all, they're crazy with their fees. I tell people, walk away. You're paying 34% in management fee, this, that, and the other. That's crazy. So it has to be a realistic number, but what is the value to the number, right? So when I hear, oh, I don't want to have to pay the fees, you don't even know what you're getting for it. Now, if you validate with other owners in the system, right, and they say, I don't know why I'm paying the fees, they just leave me alone and nobody supports me, whole other story. That's a franchise you'll want to walk away from. So fees, I would say, Brian, is the second misconception, and marketing fee, I guess, too. So there's a royalty fee, and there's a marketing fee. The marketing, I'm not going to go on a tangent and speak to that, but the marketing fees, again, do you have a social media person? Do they handle your PR, with an independent? No. So when people push back and they say, well, there's a fee, realize everything that you're getting with that fee. Okay. I would also, say that the third objection or third misconception would be that a potential buyer is, has restraints or constraints geographically because of territory. Now, every franchise they award what's called a territory. And that territory in the franchise world, everybody, most of it has to do with population, maybe households. With Neighborly, they really target in on who that consumer, because there's so much data available, they can target in on that. So when someone says, well, I don't want a small territory versus big territory, question them, how is it defined? How are you defining territory? Because territory does not have to be bad. Exclusive territory, which is mostly what gets awarded in the franchise world, protected is different than exclusive, but for sake of our conversation, we'll call it nobody can do business in your territory. That's a protection put in place by the franchisor. So it actually protects you from other franchisees coming into your area and vice versa. So to me, that's a positive, right? It's kind of looking at it just from a different angle. The pushback on, well, my territory is only this. You could have multiple territories, number one. Doug has two. The growth potential that you have within the system is what I would like people to focus on. So if you go into a system, say you buy a resale, it's one territory, it ticks all the boxes, that Doug had or you have. How else can you grow within that system? So is it acquiring other businesses? Is it adding on to your territory? There's a multiple ways that you can grow within a franchise system instead of thinking, oh no, they're just putting me in this little box and I can't do business anywhere else. So that I guess should answer. There's a lot more, but those are the top.
Those are four. Yeah, those are 3 or 4 really, really good ones.
Yeah, the top ones, right?
I've heard consistently throughout my career.
Yes.
And so, but anyway, thank you very much for that. John, do you want us to stop there and kind of take some questions? I've got more I can ask these guys. If you want me to, you tell me what you want to do.
Yeah, we pride ourselves on finishing on time or early, like the military likes to do. But some questions have come in, so if you don't mind, we'll address those.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So one that came in is, what are the common reasons franchises come up for sale?
Good idea. Good question. So there's usually 2 prevalent reasons that franchises come up for sale. First and foremost, is a franchisee has gotten to a point where they've made money. The franchise is making money consistently, and they can make a profit by selling it, right? So, and maybe they're either ready to retire or they're ready to move on to their next thing, whatever that may be. Because business owners tend to get restless a lot of times, right? So they get to a certain point, like, okay, I'm ready for my next challenge, so I'm going to sell this one and move on. That's probably the number one reason you'll find a franchise for sale. The second reason is not as nice, and that's where you find a franchisee that just wasn't a good fit for their brand, and maybe just doesn't enjoy the business, and they want to, get their investment back out of it and get out. So Diana typically works with most franchises that are profitable, have good cash flow, and somebody is buying that cash flow, as she explained earlier, versus the other ones. Here at Neighborly, we've got at any one time we've probably got across 19 brands, we've probably got anywhere from 50 to 100 resales available at any one time. And I would say, 80% are in that cash flow range. They're cash flowing, they're good businesses, franchisees ready to retire, move on, because our brands have been around a long time. And then 20% are in that other category. So.
Yeah, that's great. So at VETtoCEO, we have this Pass the Guide On program. We talk about that a lot, entrepreneurship programs and the whole, discussion going on around there never talks too much about exiting, right? Eventually, if you're a successful business, you want to exit. And if you want to exit, you have to sell the company. So, if you're going into business, it's a good idea to check out people that are trying to exit. And not to go down a rabbit's hole, but there's other reasons people sell, and life gets in the way and circumstances change, and nothing wrong with the business. And they want to sell their business. And sometimes you're doing them a favor by showing up and providing them with an opportunity to exit. So thank you for that. Another good question is, what's the franchisor's involvement in the process of a franchisee selling his or her franchise? What's the franchisor's kind of involvement in that?
It'll vary from franchisor to franchisor. Some franchisors have no, they're not in that process at all beyond just approving the buyer, and that's it. Right? They don't do anything else. For Neighborly, given our size and the number of transactions we have on an annual basis, we have a whole department that handles resale. So we have a separate resale team that just does resales within the Neighborly brands. They don't do new sales, and so we have more of a much more hands-on approach. So we will walk a franchisee through, the different ways to list their business, whether they go with an exclusive broker like Diana and list it that way, or whether they want to try it to, we're going to put it on Biz Buy Sell and try to get some buyers that way. there's multiple ways they can list it, and we'll walk them through those different options so they can choose which one it is. We'll help them with, we do not set a sales price for our franchisees. That's completely between them. And if they use a broker, their broker. However, we'll advise, we'll help them understand how to go about valuing their business, what it looks like. We'll make sure that they have all their documents together to get the business listed for sale, so they're ready to talk to a buyer, that kind of thing. So we get very involved. And then also, obviously, as all franchisors, the only thing we have the right to do in a resale situation is we do have the right to approve that buyer. So a buyer of an existing business goes through the exact same process as a buyer of a new territory would, to be approved to be a part of the brand.
Awesome. Thank you. Another question just came in. By the way, if you joined late, we are encouraging the submission of questions. Just use the little question thing that's staring you in the face there to ask a question. And again, if we don't get to your question, we will answer it via email. And if you're watching a recording of this, feel free to submit a question. Another one just came in. I'm going to read it verbatim. If a vet with the veteran-owned certification has a franchise under Neighborly or any franchise, can they win a government or state government contract? That's verbatim what the question is.
They can apply for a government or state government contract. They won't necessarily win it because of that certification, but they have the ability to then go through the process, the RFP process, if they've got that. So yes, and we've got multiple franchisees. I don't know, Doug, if you have your veteran-owned certification, but I know we have a number of franchisees that do.
Yeah, we're actually, my wife's a veteran as well, and so we're technically a woman-owned veteran business. We haven't pursued that kind of business, but I think the root of the question the person is asking, your franchise is an independent business, and so anything that an independent business can do, you can do. You just are associated with the franchisor. But when you do business, including going after contracts, you're going to be using your business name and then maybe DBA, the franchise location.
Yeah.
That applies to this. It applies to employment law.
Yeah.
You are independent from the franchisor as a business.
Correct.
Yeah. And Doug, given your answer, given your experience with your business, have you looked at trying to get government contracts because of that ownership advantage?
We have not, though we structured our ownership of the company in a way to have that option. Ultimately, for our business, the biggest opportunity is in the service sector. Somebody has a break day in their home, and I go in. Certainly, there's a lot of businesses that do contracting and make a lot of money. I personally like cash flow, where people pay me the day I do the job instead of the government paying me 120 days after the job's over and telling me I should be thankful for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Another question around lenders. Are there, a company that is large as Neighborly? I think you're the largest franchise system in the country, are you not? Or
home services franchise, yes.
Home services, yeah.
Yep.
So given that, do you have a stable of friendly banks or lenders that come in to help with a purchase? Maybe that's a Diana question.
We do. Yeah, Diana, go ahead.
Yes, I'm happy to take that. There is a ton of lenders willing to lend money. I know that earlier in the presentation, we talked about startups. There are loans for startups. Certain banks gravitate toward that. You'll have certain lenders, if you're looking at a business that has property or a lot of assets, there's lenders that will gravitate toward that type of a loan. So a lot of it is dependent on what type of business you're looking at. In the case of Neighborly Brands, a lot of what Neighborly has is that customer base, recurring revenue, not a whole lot, except with the exception of Mr. Reuter and some of the other Neighborly brands, it's not heavily asset based. But yes, and there are also lenders that specifically want to do acquisitions, right? They want to do resales, that's their shtick. And then they would like to do that over a certain price point. So again, you're not at a loss for lenders. And if you don't believe me, go check out LinkedIn and all sorts of other resources, because they're all over. They're always soliciting, for me, for my clients, There's SBA, there's different types of loans, SBA loans, conventional loans, signature loans, you name it. It's really matching. What a good broker does is match the person, right? Their net worth, their personal financial statement, what they look like on paper, and the business in a resale situation with a proper lender. So if you put all of those three together, it should work out very nicely. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah,
Thank
and then
you.
your franchise, and Mike mentioned earlier about, when it comes to financing a franchise, it can be good or bad. So as long as you're working with, if you're purchasing a reputable franchise that the SBA has done business with for many years, they have lots of active loans, they have lots of paid off loans with that franchise, then it's usually much easier than an independent business, because it's not just the business itself they're looking at the overall franchise brand and how it's performed within the SBA, within the bank portfolio or the SBA portfolio over time. And when you're dealing with brands like we have that are like Mr. Rooter's been around since 1968. I mean, it's an old brand. There's lots of history there. And so that makes a bank very, very comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw in one bit on lending, which is, if you go the Small Business Association loan route, the 7A route, which is what I did, and those loans can be up to $5 million. So it's a pretty generous program. Each individual bank handles that differently. The bank gives you the loan, not the SBA. The SBA backs the loan. We went to the bank who this business had been doing business with for 20 years, and they wouldn't give me the loan for the business because the banking, that's just not what this particular bank does. So if you want to go the SBA route, I recommend going to the SBA website, and there is because it's the government, a public document created every quarter of every bank in the United States that has done an SBA loan by dollar volume. And you can rank order those and at least give yourself the opportunity to just talk to some of them in the top 10 dollar-wise, because they do these all day long. Talk to your local person. Maybe that works out too, but call some of those top 10 banks. I had a much better experience that way.
Yeah, that's a good tip. And we talk a lot about that in our program, and not every bank's the same, right? That's another thing I'll throw in there. They're all very different. One last question is probably a good one to end on is how do you start to find a franchise for sale? Do you Google franchise for sale like you did, or business for sale and franchises come up? What's the best way to do that?
Well, if you're interested in neighborly brands, we do have a listing, right? So you can access that through us. If you go to our website, franchise.neighborly.com, you can put in a request for what is available in your area, or even if you just want to look at multiple areas, and we'll let you know exactly what resales we have available. As far as in general, I think like what Doug did, if it's for sale and it's legitimate, more than likely it's sitting on Biz Buy Sell.
Biz Buy Sell.
And that's how I found it. So I will say that with my current knowledge, I didn't even know your office existed, Brian, when I was looking.
Right.
Any legitimate franchisor of significant size has a business development office. So if you see a brand that you think you would be interested in, call directly to that headquarters and ask for the business development people. There may be off-market listings. You'll learn a lot more. They want to hear from you. So,
yeah, good stuff. Anything to add, Diane?
Well, I was going to say that Biz Buy Sell is the largest. Again, there's different websites for different size businesses. So I would say Biz Buy Sell is your number one. Businessesforsale.com would be number two. There's a company called DealStream. DealStream typically deals with the larger, and when I say larger, I'm talking in excess of the $1 million plus acquisitions. But Doug, you brought up a good point, going direct to the franchisor. As an insider, I'll tell you, sometimes a lot of franchisors want to do new development. Neighborly has a whole department for resales because they do a lot in their volume. My experience is that if you do go directly, they're not always going to tell you that they have a resale, nor will they know. That communication doesn't always exist between the franchisee. Maybe they're looking to retire. We just talked about reasons why. They may not even go to the franchisor. They just kind of go and do their own thing. So the franchisor may not even know that that's available. I would say that those web portals that I just mentioned are your best bet. You can also, there's local brokerages in your area. So even though a broker like myself in the franchise space can work nationally, you do have local brokers. So I've heard of people going into a local brokerage company and saying, hey, what's for sale? Or they have their own websites, right? What's for sale in this particular area? If you're open to relocation, and like Doug was open to relocation, those internet portals that are for everywhere are probably your best bet.
Great. Thanks. And Mike, we like to quit on time, so I'm going to turn it over to you for any comments you might have based on listening to all this, and you can close us out.
Thank you, John. Well, I'd just like to remind everyone that franchising is an excellent way to get into business, and Neighborly has a great number of brands available for everyone. If you have any other questions that you would like to add, this presentation will come out, the recording will come out. You can ask more questions in there, which will be forwarded on to the panel, and we will get answers back from you. But we want everyone to be educated on the value of franchising and the value of business ownership. So with that, thank you all. Thank you, panel. And we'll see you all again somewhere down the line. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.